All right. Everyone can see that okay? Again, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us this evening. My name is Sandy Barr. I'm the chapter director for Sierra Club's Grand Canyon chapter. And just the other day was my 24th work anniversary with Sierra Club. So I can't believe it's been 24 years. And but I have to say it has been a real privilege doing this work. So anyway, tonight we're going to talk about how to be a volunteer lobbyist. This program is co-sponsored this evening by the Coalition for Sonoran Desert Protection and the Sierra Club's Palo Verde group. And here we go. And again, just like to mention that we center our work on principles of equity, justice, and inclusion. And my goal is to ensure that we are doing that with our programs and with Environmental Day at the Capitol and all of our work. Here's what we're going to cover tonight. We'll have an overview of Arizona government and including a bit on the Arizona Corporation Commission, just a touch, a deeper dive on the legislature. We'll talk a little bit about Environmental Day at the Capitol and how you can get additional information. And then if time permits, we'll talk about some of the bills that we have been seeing so far. If it runs late, there will be another opportunity to go over the bills before Environmental Day. We're going to set up a session for a bill review where we'll actually focus on the bills we're going to be lobbying. So, but I hope to have time to do a little bit of that, but I also want to leave time for questions. All right, so let's start with the Arizona government overview. In Arizona, we have 4 branches of government. We have the usual 3, the executive, legislative, and judicial branch. But we also have a 4th branch of government, the Arizona Corporation Commission, that is established in the Arizona Constitution. And these individuals are part of the executive branch. So the governor, Governor Ducey, Secretary of State, Katie Hobbs, State Treasurer, Kimberly Yee, Attorney General, Mark Brinovich, Superintendent of Public Instruction, Kathy Hoffman. Only 2 of these people are running for re-election, Kathy Hoffman, and now Kimberly Yee. She changed her mind about running for governor. Let's talk a little bit about the governor's responsibilities. So as probably most of you know, the governor approves or vetoes bills, and in Arizona, we do have a line item veto for the budget. So a governor can go through and just eliminate certain things that he doesn't care for. He calls the legislature into special session, delivers the state of the state, and I'm using he because it's currently he, but I will say they, so you know, to not make assumptions. So anyway, delivers the state of the state address to the legislature each year, oversees state agencies, appoints individuals to boards and commission. And some of the boards and commission that the governor appoints people to require Senate concurrence. For example, the Arizona Game and Fish Commission, the Arizona State Parks Board, those types of entities. And the governor also fills vacancies for offices not addressed in the Constitution. So for example, if there's a vacancy, someone is removed or resigns from the Arizona Corporation Commission, the governor gets to appoint that person. And speaking of the Arizona Corporation Commission, as I noted earlier, they are established, this commission is established in the Arizona Constitution. These commissioners are elected. There are 5 of them, 3 Republicans and 2 Democrats. They are elected every 4 years and they have staggered terms. So every 2 years, 3 are elected, and then, or every 4 years, 3 are elected, and every 4 years, 2 are elected. So every 2 years it's either 2 or 3 that are elected. So this year, and that was a very confusing explanation of that. This year there are 2 seats up, and then in 2020 there were 3 seats up. So I think that helps a little bit. And like all of our statewide offices and the legislature, they're term limited. In this case, it's 2 consecutive terms. The Corporation Commission has a lot of authority, a lot of responsibilities. They regulate our utilities and determine our rates. They also regulate private water companies, facilitate incorporations, do securities regulations, and railroad and pipeline safety. The issue we work with them the most on is utilities regulation. And you may have heard just recently, the commission quite sadly voted down a clean energy rule that a lot of folks have been working on, including us, for about 4 years. So it's an important body and one to pay attention to. All right, let's take a little deeper dive into the legislature, because that's what we're going to focus on for Environmental Day at the Capitol. We have 30 legislative districts in Arizona. And because I've been getting a lot of questions on this, I wanted to mention that the current legislative districts, so the ones that you had all of 2021 and going back 9 years, those are the districts that you will be in which you'll be meeting with your legislators. So for example, I'm in legislative district 24. Come the elections in the fall, I'm not going to be voting for legislators in district 24. I believe it's going to be district 5. And so even though we have had new maps adopted, they don't affect the 55th legislature. They go into effect with the 56th legislature, which will be in January of 2023. We have 2 houses in Arizona, and the Senate and House of Representatives. There are 60 representatives, 31 Republicans, 29 Democrats, 30 senators, 16 Republicans, 14 Democrats. So you can see that's a razor thin margin of majority in each house. So if, for example, the Democrats all vote one way, and then one Republican joins them on a bill, that means that bill can't pass because you must have at least a simple majority. So it can make for an interesting situation. And on some bills, what it means is you have a partisan split. You'll see a lot of 31, 29, 16, 14 votes. Okay, the leadership in the state legislature, the Speaker of the House and the Senate President, these individuals have a lot of power at the Arizona legislature. Currently, the Speaker of the House is Rusty Bowers. He's from Legislative District 25 in Mesa, and he's an artist. He used to lobby for the Arizona Rock Products Association. He was in the legislature previously, so he left and lobbied, did a couple of other things, and then came back. And the Senate President, Karen Fann, is from Chino Valley. She was the mayor there and is in the real estate business. And you probably know her from her being quite vocal relative to the so-called audit of the elections. So the Speaker and Senate President, as I said, have a lot of power in the legislature. They control the chambers, what goes on in there, who can be there. They sign any bills or acts or other actions. They're the ones that decide what the standing committees will be, who's on them, who chairs them. And they can remove people and assign people without having any kind of special approval of that. So we've seen a lot of shuffling going on with committees this year as people were out sick with COVID. And for example, Speaker Bowers assigned himself to the Natural Resources, Energy and Water Committee for one committee meeting. And then, yeah, they decide which bills will be heard when, they decide where those bills are assigned, and they also decide all the employment and personnel issues. And then the minority leadership has a lot less power, as you might guess. They're in the minority at the legislature. Currently, the House Minority Leader is Reginald Boulding. He is from Levine, and the Senate Minority Leader is Rebecca Rios from South Phoenix. They're actually both from the same legislative district, which is a little bit unusual, I think, to have the leadership in both houses from the same district. And they, their power lies in being able to keep their caucus together. If they can vote as a block, that means there are some bills that they can stop altogether. For example, bills that need 2/3 vote or 3/4 vote. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But that, and then, you know, as I said before, right now, if they keep their caucus together and one Republican is gone or decides to vote against their caucus, then they can also help kill bills. So let's see. All right. And then another important part of Arizona legislating is the citizen initiative process. In our Constitution, we the people can initiate laws and also stop laws that the legislature passes. And so our Constitution gives us an opportunity to engage in direct democracy. And it has been a really important tool in Arizona for addressing issues that the legislature just wouldn't. For example, you know, investment spending on education. We've also, most of our tobacco tax and other healthcare related measures have come from the people. And then some environmental ones as well, such as the ban on leg hold traps on public lands, the Arizona Heritage Fund, those also came from ballot measures. So let's get into a little bit about how a bill becomes a law. It's I think helpful to understand the process. And I'm sorry, I don't have like a an animated version of this, like Schoolhouse Rock. One day I hope to do one, but hopefully this will be helpful for you.
Oh, Sandy, I'm so disappointed.
All right. So every bill, of course, must have at least one House or Senate sponsor. The Chamber of Commerce may have a bill, they may have drafted it, it may be all their bill, but they have to still find someone in the House or Senate to introduce it for them. Bills can be introduced in either house of the legislature. There's no requirement, for example, to have budget bills originate in the House, like in the Congress. So you can have bill start in either house or in both. And we have seen a lot of that in recent years, where they introduce identical bills in each house and then switch them for each other on the vote, on the third read vote. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. The Legislative Council is a group of lawyers. They are located actually between the historic Capitol and the Executive Tower. There's a little like annex area in there, and that's where Legislative Council is. And they help write the bills and make sure they're in the proper form. You can have bills with one sponsor. You could have basically the whole legislature sponsor a bill. It varies, and so some people like to get a lot of sponsors because they think it shows that they have more support, but that doesn't necessarily hold true. One thing that does hold true is usually bills with someone in the majority sponsoring them have a better shot of getting through the process. And as you may have guessed, most bills do come from lobbyists, but that doesn't mean they can't come from regular people. So these bills get assigned a number by the clerk. They're first read and then assigned to a standing committee by either the House Speaker or the Senate President. And then, back to the clerk for printing and posting and distribution. They really don't print very many bills anymore because they're all online and electronic, but they still do print some. And if you have difficulty reading things online, because there are some folks that do, you can request paper copies of the bills. All right, and then after a bill has been assigned to a committee, the committee chair can decide to hear the bill or not. A lot of bills die right here at that point in the process because committee chairs, just will put the bill in the drawer and not hear them. If they do hear a bill, they usually take public testimony on them. Again, they don't have to, they're not required to take public testimony. It's pretty bad form for committee chairs not to take testimony, but we have seen some over the years that didn't on certain bills. And of course, there's always the trick of giving you so little time you can hardly say anything. Like 1 minute is really hard to get your points across, and we have seen committees do that. And another thing that they'll do is say, okay, we're going to allow a half hour for this bill, no more. And if there are hundreds of people who wanted to speak to it, they're obviously not going to have a chance to. Although we haven't seen that many lately because of COVID and other factors. The committees can pass the bill, and it will, if it passes, then it will go on to the Rules Committee. Of course, they can also vote the bill down. And again, this is another opportunity for a bill to fail. Not that many bills fail at this point. If a committee chair puts a bill on an agenda, 9 out of 10 times the bill is going to pass out of committee. Once in a while, like they'll hear a Democratic bill and then vote it down. That happens here and there, but most of the time, if they actually get on an agenda, they pass. All bills get assigned to both a standing committee and the Rules Committee. And the Rules Committee is where they're supposed to decide if a bill is constitutional and in the proper format. It ends up being a committee where they will just hold bills, and they also pass a number of bills that are not constitutional. So the rules attorneys will tell them, hey, that has some constitutional issues, and they'll go ahead and pass it anyway. So it's not necessarily a great check on those, but you will see rules amendments that fix technical issues, and once in a while fix things that have constitutional issues. So, and of course, yeah, if the committee defeats the bill, it doesn't go to rules and it's dead. There are ways to bring bills back that have died in committee. One is for someone who voted on the prevailing side, which would be the no side, to make a motion for reconsideration. So, all right. These standing committees are a key opportunity for public input. Unfortunately, this year, the legislature is not allowing for remote testimony. Last year, you could participate via Zoom. They made you jump through some hoops, but there was quite a lot of participation despite all the hoops. And so wherever you were in Arizona, you could participate. Now, this session, you have to actually come to the Capitol and speak. Like I said, it's a really good opportunity. This year, I'm not encouraging people to do it just because of COVID, and instead, encouraging people to use other ways to communicate, and we can talk a little bit more about this, but this is a key part of the process. And the nice thing about the legislature is that you can testify in these committees without getting special permission. If you want to testify in a congressional committee, you have to be invited to testify. Here you can sign up via request to speak. Do that the very day you want to speak and request and have an opportunity then to speak on a bill. This is a point where you also, if you're working a particular bill, you will want to have talked to legislators on the committee ahead of time, and perhaps even send in some written comments to them. The request to speak system allows you an opportunity to do that as well. And then we already talked about testimony. So this is kind of an aside, but I like to focus on it because I get so many questions about strike everything amendments. But one thing that the Arizona legislature can do that is something I think a bit unusual, or at least something that a lot of people think doesn't make any sense, is to take a bill and totally strike that bill and replace it with a brand new bill including a new title, but keep the same number. And that's like a strike everything amendment. But, you know, when you go to look at, this was actually from last year, Senate Bill 1156 from last year, you would see the original bill. You would have to actually look at the strike everything amendment to see what it actually did until they added that on the floor. So this is used as a way to bring back bills that have died earlier in the session. It's a way to do controversial bills at the last minute, so no one has a chance to prepare. And I frankly think it is a really bad policy, but it is something they can do. The only good news is that they can only do these strike everything amendments in committee. They can't do them on the floor, so that's helpful. All right, moving along with how a bill becomes a law. After the Rules Committee passes a bill out of rules, they refer it to what is called the Committee of the Whole. So the Committee of the Whole is basically the whole body. So in the House, every member of the House, all 60 members. And before it goes to that Committee of the Whole, however, there is an informal part of the process where the caucuses consider the bills. And that's where the Democrats all get together and talk about the bills that are coming up on the Committee of the Whole calendar. The Republicans all get together and do the same. And by the way, yes, they do send spies to each other's caucuses to hear what the other one is saying. So they know what's going on. And this is where sometimes you'll hear about amendments, you'll hear people disagreeing about bills. So it is a good thing to observe if you are following the process. And then again, the Speaker and Senate President decide when bills go to Committee of the Whole, what the order is. You know, they can have a Committee of the Whole calendar and you think the bill is going to be up and they can just decide not to hear the bill that day. So a lot of times when people ask, when is something going to be heard, we try to give the best information possible, but it's the Speaker and the Senate President that decide that. So sometimes we could be off by days. So COW, again, is this session of the entire House or Senate. In the Committee of the Whole, they can have debate. That's where they adopt all the amendments, including the amendments that were adopted in the standing committees. They usually don't record any votes in Committee of the Whole. They just do it on a voice vote. Sometimes someone will question the ruling of the chair and they will do a standing vote. And then if a bill actually happened to fail in Committee of the Whole, they do have to do a recorded vote then. And then we get to the recorded vote. That's the third reading of the bill. And this is where they can explain their vote, but there's no debate. In the House, they have put time limits on vote explanation, pretty tight time limits, because the Democrats were using that pretty effectively. And in Committee of the Whole, for a bill to move out of Committee of the Whole, you just have to have a majority of those present. Any bill for a third read has to have at least a majority of the entire body. So it doesn't, you know, so if someone is absent, basically it counts as like a no vote. And some bills do require super majorities, either 2/3 or 3/4 vote. If they're doing a new tax or fee, an override or something with an emergency clause, it has a 2/3 vote requirement. And then if they're going to change a ballot measure, something we passed, the voters passed, it needs a 3/4 vote, and it must also further the purpose of the ballot measure. Just one note about the emergency clause. If a bill passes with an emergency clause on it, it is not referable to the ballot. It becomes law immediately upon the governor signing it. So that, so that's an important, consideration about those bills, and whether or not the emergency is really necessary. It's something to look at, scrutinize. And again, that's an area where the minority party can have a big influence and not allow the emergency to go on a bill. If it passes on a third read, then it goes over to the other house, and for a very similar process. The process in the Senate and the House are very similar. If when it goes over, then that once it goes over, if that house makes changes to it, it goes back to it and then votes it out, it goes back to the original house, and the original house can concur and just take a final vote on it, or they can refuse to accept the amendments, and it would go to conference committee. And in conference committee, they would adopt amendment that both agreed to. It would go back for a final vote in each house. So one rule the legislature can't change is that every bill has to pass out of both houses in the same form before it can go up to the governor. And then it goes to the governor, and the governor can sign, veto, or allow the bill to become law without their signature. We have no pocket veto in Arizona. So if the governor doesn't act, then a bill will become law. The governor has 5 days, excluding Sundays, to sign or veto a bill during the legislative session. And then at the end of the session has 10 days. So. All right, let's talk a little bit about volunteer lobbying. And first, we'll talk about the qualifications. So what do you need to be a volunteer lobbyist? Passion for your issue, knowledge or willingness to learn about the issues and the process. And this doesn't mean you have to become an expert, but you want to know something about the issue. And then just a willingness to speak up. Nothing too complicated about it. And as long as you're speaking as an individual, which almost everyone is, there's no requirement for registering or all of the reporting and things that I have to do as someone officially representing the Sierra Club. So here are a few do's and don'ts for volunteer lobbying. And I would say for lobbying overall, if you want to meet with one of your legislators, you should make an appointment. If you just show up at the Capitol, chances are you won't actually get to meet with them. And right now, if you're like me, you probably are doing most of your meetings virtually. So you really do want to make an appointment so you can set up a Zoom link or some other format for that meeting. When you go into these meetings with legislators, you really you want to be honest. And if you are asked a question and you don't know the answer to it, just say, I don't know. I know that sounds like common sense, and maybe it is, but a lot of people think that they have to know the answer, and they try to answer things and sometimes get themselves in a little bit of trouble that way. So just say you don't know. Of course, you want to be nice to everyone. That's just a good policy. There are too many mean people already in the political process. So being cordial to the assistants and the other people that are helping you to get in to meet with your legislators. I always try to be at least 2 minutes early. Some people prefer to be 5 minutes early, but do understand that if you're early or on time, others, the legislators may not be. You want to, in lobbying your issue, it's important to tell your story, why you care. Facts and data are important, but really make it a little bit personal if you can, and talk about why this is important to you. Always thank them. If you can't thank them for anything else, just thank them for the visit, and of course, enjoy yourself. And then the don'ts are kind of the opposite of the do's, of course. And I have a more detailed handout on this that has some other tips as well. But, you know, being angry and hostile, of course, is not particularly effective. But you do want to be assertive. So sometimes legislators will start talking about something else. It's okay to, you know, assert yourself and say, well, you know, we came to talk about this, and, you know, kind of put it back on track. And also sometimes they may ask you about something that, you know, maybe it's an environmental issue, but it's not one that you've worked on. So again, don't worry about if you don't know about it, because you don't want to lose credibility on it, because that will affect you for the future, and also perhaps affect others as well. Usually don't want to have tons of material for legislators, whether it's in electronic format or a piece of paper. I always try to keep things to 1 page front and back, or 2 pages, if you will, electronically, if not less. And you can always get more information to legislators if they ask for it. And then it's fine to tweet or post on Facebook, take a photo with your legislators, definitely encourage it. My advice is, though, not to put anything on social media that you wouldn't say to them directly. I think it's probably a good policy with people overall. If you would be uncomfortable saying something to their face, maybe it's not something you want to put on social media. All right, and then these are just a few tips, and let me check the time. I'm going to go through these fairly fast. These are a few tips about if you're actually going to run a bill or you want to stop a bill. And one thing that, like, when people are thinking about doing legislation, one thing that I always encourage them to ask is, do you really need a bill? Because getting bills through the entire process can be very cumbersome and take a number of years. Sometimes things can be accomplished through rulemaking, you know, regulations. Maybe it's something that local government has the authority to do. So if there's an issue and you're like, yeah, I want to do a bill on this, just maybe look and see if there are other avenues. You do want to start early if you're going to do a bill. So I would say at least, you know, early fall the year before, if not sooner. if you're going to do a bill in the legislature. Do your homework, look at what other states have done. That's one thing that I've done a few times when we have decided to introduce legislation, and just there's a really good environmental justice bill, for example, in New Jersey that we asked Senator Mendez to introduce here. You do want to find a credible sponsor if you want to get a bill passed. Generally, you're going to have a lot better luck if it's someone in the majority. But we did see 4 electric vehicle bills pass out of committee this week, and they were all bills that were sponsored by Senator Steele, and she's a Democrat. Look at what costs are associated with any program that you're proposing. Likewise, if you're trying to kill a bill, getting a fiscal note on it that looks at the costs can be helpful, and any legislator can request a fiscal note on a bill. Know who your allies are and try and make more friends. And if there's an agency that is going to be implementing your program, you want to talk to them. Likewise, if you're trying to stop a bill, it's good to talk to the agencies. And then a lot of people think that once a bill is introduced, it'll just get heard, but you have to actually work to get bills heard in committees and work with the sponsor. Ask them to ask for the bill to be heard. You can also ask for it to be heard. There are all kinds of deadlines in the legislature for when bills need to be heard, when in the committee of origin or the House of Origin, when they have to be heard in the other house, when they have to be introduced. And so you really do want to look at all those deadlines, keep an eye on things. And of course, if you're trying to stop something, that remember, there's no bill is really dead until the legislature adjourns. There are all kinds of ways that they can resurrect these bills. All right, and the legislature's website has a lot of information and good resources on it, and I encourage you to explore it. You can find lists of all the members. You can find all the committees. Over here, you can click on the link for live, and you can find any of the committees and that are meeting at that time, and you can click on it and you can watch them remotely. So you can still watch everything going on at the legislature except for the Senate caucuses. You can still watch everything, but not testify remotely. There is going to be a program next Monday on how to use the request to speak system, but I just wanted to mention it to you because I think it's an important tool. You create an account and have someone activate it for you down at the Capitol, and you can sign in on bills, and express your opinion for or against, and put a short comment as well. And then all the legislators will see that, and that's super helpful. These are just some online resources, and I can send you the slides so you don't have to worry about that, but they're just some places where you can find things, including our bill tracker and the legislative updates. If you haven't heard by now, we are having Environmental Day at the Capitol on Wednesday, February 9th, and you can participate either virtually or in person. We are asking everyone who participates in person to wear a mask because the COVID numbers are still, pretty high. I probably should not use these photos because they make us all nostalgic for when we could gather in large groups like that and not really be concerned. But anyway, we will also have some tabling on Environmental Day with information and some speakers. And then we'll just be live streaming those events for people who don't come to the Capitol. For meetings with legislators, many of those will be via Zoom. And again, some of those will be hybrid activities where some people will be in person and some people will be on Zoom. So if you haven't signed up and you're planning to go, do sign up so we can be sure and get you connected with your legislative team, which we will be starting to do this weekend. And then we have a couple more Zooms coming up, one tomorrow on on rivers, request to speak on Monday, and then on the third one on democracy. And if you want to stay up to date on information in between, we put out weekly legislative updates. Anyone can sign up. You don't have to be a Sierra Club member. And we usually encourage you to sign in on requests to speak on certain bills. We tell you what's coming up for the week, and then sometimes we'll have a particular bill we want you to take action on. All right, how am I doing for time? Should I break here and see if you have questions on that so far, and then we can talk about some of the bills? Any questions on what we've covered so far? Jody.
Yes, I've been doing request to speak for 2 or 3 years, and I'm not sure I'm really doing it right. And I will do it on a day when I'm free. You know, I'll just do several issues, and so I rarely do it on the day that they're meeting because I might be preoccupied. Is that still doable? Does that still work?
Yeah, you have to, you can still sign in on bills after they've gone out of committee, but it's most effective to do it before they actually hear it, because that's when those requests to speak, that request to speak information, who's for and who's against, has the most impact.
Okay.
But it's okay to do it later as well.
So like I do it like on a Saturday or a Sunday, not necessarily on the day that they're meeting. That's still okay?
Yeah, just as long as it's
Beforehand?
before they meet. Yeah,
Okay. All right.
great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jody. Any other questions? All right, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about what's going on so far. They started second Monday in January, as the Constitution requires them to. We don't know when it will end. I've already told you they don't have any COVID protocols down there, no remote testimony. The biggies are the state budget, because the state has a lot of money right now. And of course, anti-democracy measures, water, and then energy and climate are some big issues for us as well. Here are a few of the energy bills that have been introduced so far. I wanted to call out one of these because it is coming, well, I'll talk about two real quickly. The Corporation Commission Qualification Bill 2536 is actually going to be up in committee next Tuesday. And it requires that anyone running for the Corporation Commission meet certain requirements. First of all, they have to be at least 30 years old. I'm not sure why that is necessary. And then, but all of the requirements are basically have 5 years of experience with economics, engineering, finances, nothing specific about energy or clean energy or anything like that. And so we don't have those kind of qualifications for the governor, frankly. There are age qualifications, but I think that is a really, really bad idea and would keep a lot of really good folks from being corporation commissioners. So we'll definitely be opposing that. And then the other one I thought I would mention quickly, because it has already been heard in committee, is 2101. And this deals with retail competition of electricity and basically deletes the provisions in law that provide for retail competition. We oppose this bill, not because we are big fans of necessarily of retail competition, but there are some other things that we support, such as community choice aggregation. And we also wanted to make sure that they weren't preempting the Corporation Commission from actually doing its job oversight wise relative to the utility planning. So that bill is still, there are amendments still being worked on. And so I'm not sure where we'll end up being on it, but we should have a pretty good idea by Environmental Day, I think. So there are a number of electric vehicle bills that have been introduced, and I just wanted to mention again that Senator Steele's bills 1150, 1151, excuse me, 52 and 54 all passed out of the Transportation Committee this week, which is pretty amazing. They were amended, but they're all pretty good bills, creating some pilot programs for for charging and requiring coordination for zero emission vehicle plan. That's 1152. So that was kind of exciting. And then there are several electric bus bills. 1246 has the best chance of advancing, and it basically allows schools to develop a pre-approved list of contractors to kind of expedite being able to get electric school buses in their fleet. Also, these bills have already been heard in committee. The Department of Environmental Quality continuation is up this year, continues the agency for 8 years. We would like to see them include some metrics, some requirements of the agency in that continuation bill, especially because the agency got a quite poor performance audit relative to its water quality work. And so we think that they need to include some more accountability. We didn't have much luck getting anything in committee, but we'll keep at it. And then they're trying to get this coal combustion residuals program that's basically coal ash. And DEQ seems to be pursuing this program right now because the Environmental Protection Agency is finally actually doing some things to enforce it at the federal level. So we're concerned about DEQ getting this, and just basically because they're awfully cozy with the utilities and the timing of it. And I'm just gonna skip that one. There are a lot of water bills, and I just listed a couple here. one that we're working to try to stop is 2055 and 1147. It's the exact same bill. And the House bill sailed through committee and will likely go to the floor soon. 1147 got held because it would have failed. The Democrats were going to all vote no. And there was one Republican on the committee that had concerns about it. And so it got held. I'm sure it will be back, or they'll just rely on 2055 going through. But it gives private water companies the authority to import water from the Harquahala Valley and into active management areas. This is something they're trying to do to help with spur or allow additional development in Pinell County, because right now they can't they can't plat new subdivisions because there's not adequate water. And so they're trying to find a way to access this water in the Harquahala. And then 2510, I'll mention too, is rural management areas. It establishes a process for having these rural management areas that would provide some kind of regulation on groundwater pumping outside of active management areas. Unfortunately, Representative Cobb had this only apply to counties along the Colorado River. So it would, it's basically a bill for La Paz and Mojave counties. So not, and it's not nearly as strong as it needs to be.
And
That being said, it probably won't go forward anyway. Yeah, I think it's a long shot. It's interesting because Representative Cobb chairs a powerful committee, the Appropriations Committee. She's in the majority, and she's had this bill. She's introduced it. This will be, I think, the third session, and she has not been able to get Representative Gail Griffin to hear the bill. So see what happens. And then there are a plethora of anti-democracy and anti-voting rights bills. I pulled out, I had this huge list and I just pulled out a few. They're trying to limit schools and cities from doing mail-in voting. A lot of times in off-year elections, they'll just do all mail-in voting. It is very effective. They've been doing it for a long time, but for some reason the legislature thinks it's a bad idea. Prohibiting unmonitored drop boxes for dropping your ballots off, which is ridiculous. What unmonitored means exactly, we're not sure. Does the US mailbox that you drop things in, is that unmonitored? Mostly, yes. So anyway, it's just a really bad idea. A lot of these come from the, sort of the big lie of the 2020 elections. So, and there are a number of ID bills trying to require more ID to further discourage voting. And then Fillmore's bill 2596 is I think pretty much unconstitutional, but it has a number of things: outlaw mail-in voting, restricting early voting, people, you couldn't electronically count ballots. People would have to count every ballot, and then the legislature could approve or reject the election results. So these are very anti-democracy. There are also a number of anti-initiative measures. The good news with most of these is they actually have to go to the voters. They can't change these because they have to change the Constitution, and only the voters can change the Constitution. But they want to require supermajorities, percentage of signatures from each legislative district to get on the ballot. And then one that isn't a referral, 1094, says that you have to read that description at the top of a ballot measure. And if it's not read to you or you don't read it, then your signature is invalid, which is ridiculous. Maybe you already read it someplace else. Maybe you already read the entire measure. So it's just another way to try to disqualify signatures and make it harder to get on the ballot. And then there are a couple of measures that are already on the ballot, but I think I'll just move along in the interest of time. And then just a few things on lands or outdoor issues. The State Parks Heritage Fund is something that got reinstated after going away in 2010, as the legislature totally eliminated it. And so last year was the first year in like 10 years that it had gotten any money, I guess maybe 11 years. But it was a one-time appropriation. This year, again, trying to get it reinstated to take the dollars from the Arizona Lottery, which is where it came from originally and what the voters approved in 1990. The voters did approve $10 million per year, however, and so we're encouraging people to ask for this to be amended to include $10 million. The State Parks Heritage Fund helps to fund local community parks, trails, cultural resource protection, those types of things. So, and then the rest of these are what are called resolutions. So they don't really change the law, but they send bad messages. And so they always try to send a bad message on the border wall. These are usually done for election purposes. And in this particular one, they say they want any unused border wall construction materials that the federal government has to come to the states, and so the state can construct border wall, which frankly they can't do. So anyway, but still just a really bad message and intended to divide and vilify refugees and migrants. So HR 2024 is against the Biden administration's 30 by 30 program, which is to protect 30% of our lands and waters from development. And in this resolution, there's also opposition to wilderness or any conservation lands. And again, just a bad resolution. And then SCR 1010 is a nice resolution recognizing the importance of getting outdoors and equal access to nature.
But don't protect nature, but encourage people getting outdoors.
Yes, exactly. All right. So hopefully you'll join us for Environmental Day in one way or the other, or if you can't, participate in getting the legislative updates, and that you'll speak up. And by speak up, I mean, writing, calling, not everyone wants to testify in a committee, but in whatever way you feel like you can participate. And when when it is, when we are on the other side of COVID, I hope you will make a point of coming to the Capitol and testifying in a committee, because it really can help make a difference especially for legislators, to see people who are not, they're not being paid to be there. They're there because, because they really care about an issue. And so I just want to encourage that. And again, I'll take additional questions if you have them.